Thank you, Ron. We've got about half an hour. We're going to cover 3 topics this afternoon. We're going to talk about droplet size and efficacy. We're going to talk a little bit about spray drift and weather conditions, and we're going to talk about sprayer rinsate disposal. Just wanted to make a couple comments. I'm always happy to be in Alberta. You know, we had a blizzard in Saskatoon yesterday, and we have a foot of snow on the ground. It was minus 25 this morning when I left. And I thought I was going to have a hard time coming here on the highway, but things got better and better as the closer I got to Alberta. And for lo and behold, when I got to Medicine Hat, there were tumbleweeds blown across the street. I immediately thought of Bob Blackshaw, and I thought maybe I should pick those things up and bring them in for him. We're going to get right into it. I think in spraying, we always are challenged by a compromise. And the compromise really is to get effective pest management while protecting the environment. And that's an ongoing challenge, and I think that's something we have to keep in mind right from the very beginning. And even with a John Deere sprayer, you can generate spray drift. So we have to be mindful that even a lot of money can't protect you from that kind of a thing. So want to talk about a new technology that's coming out, and these are the asymmetric double nozzles. I think double nozzles in general are a good thing. They are useful for some fungicides, but they really add very little value to most other things. So they're not necessary for herbicides. They may have some benefit in some case for some insecticides, but they typically have an application for very specific fungicides that require coverage on a vertical target like a weed head for Fusarium head blight, those kinds of things. The traditional double nozzle has always been the nozzle that basically sprays a similar angle forward and backward. Typically that's a 30-degree angle from the vertical. And you see these with the twin cap, and you can get the air bubble jet in southern Alberta with a twin cap, a very popular nozzle here. In this case, I've depicted one that's with the greenleaf air mix. You see some other greenleaf nozzles here. These are the ones that are now asymmetric, and that's the new thing that's coming. These are nozzles, double nozzles, where the leading nozzle points more down, and the trailing nozzle points more out the back. And the idea really here is that we get more coverage on the rearward side of the target. In other words, the nozzle, as it moves away from a target, it will project more of its spray toward the target that it's moving away from, and that's why we have a much more aggressive angle towards the back. A new nozzle that's out this year and came on the market late last year is called the TJet AI 3070. And you can see here, it's a funny looking nozzle, but you can see the direction of travel is this way. And the leading nozzle is, the leading fan is about 30 degrees off the vertical. And the trailing fan is very aggressively angled at about 70 degrees off the vertical. So it almost sprays straight out the back. The idea here is now to allow you to get more equal distribution between the forward and the backward pointing nozzle. Are we okay with this? I'll try to be less animated up here. We did some work with this nozzle. I want to just share one quick result with you. We measured, for example, the deposit on the front side of the target and the back side, and these are the red and the blue bars that we see here. And we basically sprayed a single nozzle, and we sprayed it at a high height, 30 inches, at an intermediate height, 20 inches, at a low height, about 15 inches, and we compared that to some standard nozzles here. And we found that at these high heights, we really lost deposition on the vertical target. And the lower we made that boom, the greater the overall deposition on that vertical target became. We also saw that it was still, even though it was an asymmetric nozzle, it was still fairly difficult to provide uniformity of the deposit. About 60% of the deposit when the forward siding, when it came from the forward pointing spray, which is the red bar, and about 40% of the deposit came from the trailing angle, even though that's a much more aggressively angled nozzle. On the good side, it certainly is significantly better than a single nozzle, which is the far right here. This is a single air induction nozzle, and we see that the forward side of the head receives much more spray than the backward side of the head. So that was, I think, a significant improvement. But I think the big lesson here is that we should use low booms with these double nozzles, and that I think an automatic boom leveling device would be really useful here to achieve those low heights. Low heights are also beneficial in other ways. They also certainly reduce spray drift, and they can in some cases have some benefit in terms of canopy penetration. So overall, I think we just have another reason now to go to lower boom heights with our sprays. I want to talk about spray quality, and this is always an evolving picture. I just want to make a very simple statement to start off, and we'll revise that in the next few minutes. And that simple statement is that I want you to use a coarse spray as a general purpose spray for almost all pesticides. A coarse spray, and we'll tell you exactly what a coarse spray is. But before I go there, I want to just review a couple of things about spray distributions, okay? When we spray a typical flat fan nozzle, and we look at the proportion of the total spray volume that is distributed over the range of droplet sizes that we have, we see a pattern that looks like this. We see usually fairly little of the volume on the left-hand side where the driftable fines are, and also fairly little volume on the right-hand side where the big droplets are. We see a fair bit in the middle. Now, all nozzles have this basic pattern. It doesn't matter whether it's air-induced, whether it's a high or a low pressure, a high flow or a low flow. They all look something like this. Now, what changes when we change to a low drift nozzle is we just simply shift that distribution to the right a little bit. So, for example, here is a low drift version of that same nozzle, same pressure, same flow rate, same manufacturer. It's the Wilger SR. And you can see now we still have small droplets, we still have large droplets. It's just that we shifted everything over to the right a little bit, and that's where on the left side here that I'm highlighting, you see the drift reduction. So that's where drift reduction comes from. We got about a 70% reduction in drift, and that's because there's a 70% reduction in the proportion of the total volume that's emitted in the fine droplets. On the other hand, we might be gaining a little bit on the right-hand side, the big droplets, but in the middle, we're actually we're seeing a net overall gain in the proportion of the volume that's in a usable size fraction. Now, if we go a little coarser and we go with this second nozzle I just showed you and we superimpose an even coarser nozzle, we see a further shift to the right, further erosion of drift potential, but we're now seeing in addition to some of these really coarse droplets that might not be that valuable. And again, if we go further and go to even coarser nozzle, we see now an accumulation of material on the right-hand side that actually might not have any value for us because relatively few droplets, but relatively large proportion of the total volume. In other words, we might be wasting 20% of the volume in droplets that aren't doing any coverage. So that's an important thing to remember. If we look at the numbers here, there's a couple of lessons to remember. As we go down in this array of nozzles here, there's 4 nozzles. These are the Wilger line of nozzles, the ER, SR, MR, DR. As we go down in rows, the nozzles get coarser by design. So there's a lower nozzle. And I've listed two sizes here, the 11004 and the 11006. So as we go to a higher flow rate, we also get to a coarser spray. So now, if you want to get a coarse spray quality, it's about a 370 some micron VMD, you would need to go to the MR if you had a low flow rate. But if you decide to go to a faster travel speed or a higher water volume and you needed a higher flow rate nozzle, you would need to go to a different brand of nozzle to get that same spray quality. So you've got to sort of manage the flow rate relationship with spray quality. Just want to really quickly highlight a nozzle here. This is, again, one of these 4 nozzles I showed you a minute ago. Now on the first column, I'm showing you the drift potential, about 17%. So that's intermediate of all these nozzles. On the far right column, I'm showing you the proportion of the total, on the second column, I'm showing you the proportion of the total volume that's in droplets that are too big to do anything valuable. It's about 12%. And so when you subtract these two numbers from 100, you get the usable size fraction, which is about 71% in this case. Now, when you compare that to a finer nozzle, which is the nozzle, the first nozzle, the ER11006, you can see that actually the low drift nozzle has a larger proportion of usable dosage by having 71 in the middle range. And when you go to a lower drift nozzle, you're actually having you're seeing a net loss because you're producing too many big drops. So actually, the minimal road solution is usually the best for efficacy, and that's why I'm recommending this coarse spray quality, because it's a suitable compromise for all the things you're trying to balance. The spray qualities are now depicted in colors, and you can go to manufacturers' catalogs, and I'll show you a page in a second, but they're color-coded according to drift risk. So the least drift risk prone are the white and the green at the top and blue, and as it gets more and more drift prone, you get to the yellow, orange, and red colors. So that's the color code that's being used. We don't recommend extremely coarse, that's too coarse. We don't recommend fine or very fine, that's too fine. Very coarse you have to be careful with. That really leaves us with that middle ground in terms of overall efficacy, and that's why I'm highlighting the coarse spray quality. It's a good compromise, reasonably effective at lower water volumes, very good drift protection, and still enough droplets for coverage. So occasionally we'll drift into mediums, and sometimes into very coarse. So it depends on exactly what we're trying to do, and we do that with spray pressure. So I do recommend that you use these new online tools to determining the right nozzle choice for you, and there's also some apps that are coming out, and there's one I'll show you. This is one of the best ones here. This is the Wilger Tip Wizard. It's at wilger.net, and you simply select Tip Wizard. It obviously recommends the Wilger line of nozzles, but if you're just interested in flow rate, any nozzle will do. What's unique about this site is it gives you a chance to put droplet size in. So for example, the number 5 item down here, you'll see it has a 350 micron VMD entered, and you can just enter any number that you want, and then it'll solve that matrix of water volume and travel speed and so forth for you. So it's a very powerful, one of the best calculators out there. The traditional way is still to use these charts. These charts are also color-coded now, and you can see, for example, if we go to the top left corner, you can see the first column here has the colors I just mentioned to you. So you'll see that this nozzle here, at these pressures above 70, is going to be a medium spray. If you go between 40 and 60, you're at a coarse spray, and so on and so forth. And that is how you, as an applicator, would determine how you achieve a coarse spray that I'm recommending. Obviously, it's a function of nozzle choice. It's a function of spray pressure. It's a function of flow rate. A lot of things to balance here. Other manufacturers like T-Jet do it in a similar way, slightly different organization at the table. But again, here, this is for a Turbo T-Jet and Turbo T-Jet Duo. And they simply say here, if you want to have this flow rate, the 05, this is the pressure at which you would achieve the coarse spray quality. If you go lower than that, you'd have to be careful with grassy weeds or contact products. Higher than that, you just simply have to be careful with spray drift. So that's the process. T-Jet has an app available on the iPhone, available on the Android device. It's called the Tip Selector. If you go to the Play Store, just type in T-Jet, and it'll be the only one that comes up. And you just enter your numbers, and your nozzles are identified. And then you can also select a spray quality, and it'll highlight the ones that are coarse. And then you can get more information about what pressure produces coarse, and it gives you more and more information as you go through it. It's a very simple, very useful app. Moving along, there are some cases when we have to be cautious with spray quality and spray pressure and water volume. And that is when we use grassy weeds and contact products. In those cases, a little more water, a little higher pressure, and that achieves the sort of the fine end of the coarse spray quality is recommended. In grassy weeds, we have a fair bit of tolerance, like in all weeds with herbicides. Most herbicides will allow us to go to about a VMD of 450 before the efficacy drops off. That's the edge of the coarse to very coarse spray quality. And after that, we will see some efficacy loss. Not always, not with all products. It'll be more prevalent with group 1s, less prevalent with group 2s. With broadleaf weeds, we have more tolerance. Now, if we go to a coarser spray, we can probably migrate all the way up to 500 microns. That's now getting very coarse. And we will not see as much of a performance loss if we go beyond that compared to a grassy herbicide, because the target is more suitable for that kind of a large droplet that has easy to wet, big leaves. This morning, you heard Bob talk about kochia. And of course, kochia is one of these more difficult to control broadleaf weeds, and spray quality is going to be important here. Finely divided leaves, compared to others, difficult to wet leaves. So I think water volume is going to be very important if you want to get those with your group 4 now that we have glyphosate resistance. So just summarizing some of this efficacy work, group 2, 4, and 9 are really quite well suited for these very coarse sprays and coarse sprays. They're systemic. They target primarily broadleaf weeds. In the case of glyphosate, it has a natural affinity for doing well at coarse. You have to be careful with contacts, group 1, 6, and 10, and maybe limit yourself to a coarse and finer. Make sure your water volume and your spray pressure are high enough. The new so-called new modes of action, group 27 has been out for a few years, but that's in velocity M3. It's also in infinity, pyrosulfatol. It's a contact, and we ought to be careful in terms of water volume and droplet size there as well to make sure that it works properly. The label does allow you to go down to 5 gallons, but I would be cautious with the coarser sprays to do that. The newer ones in group 14, carfentrazone and clean start, soflufenicil and heat, and authority, although it's pre-plant, a little bit more sensitive again to spray quality. Just want to show you a clean start, some clean start work that Eric Johnson and I did a couple years back, where we saw very strong evidence that when we went to lower water volumes with clean start, looking at control of Roundup Ready canola, volunteer canola, with less water, which we're traditionally used to using for Roundup or glyphosate, the carfentrazone component performed less well. So higher water volumes are essential for this product. In the same token, we went to the coarser sprays where, again, traditionally glyphosate products perform quite well. The carfentrazone component did not perform so well. So there's a real decision to be made here. Got a tank mix of products that behave absolutely in the opposite way, and what are you to do? And the answer is that you do again have to compromise. You do have to up your water volume. You do have to make your spray a little finer. And you have to mitigate some of the negative effects it might have on glyphosate. You might want to add some ammonium sulfate to mitigate the hard water issues, or you might want to add some glyphosate just to up the performance slightly, make sure that carfentrazone component is doing its job. So a very important lesson. So we do want to be about in the bottom, sort of in the middle of this chart, typically with our spray application. We want to be about coarse, and we want to be about 8 US gallons per acre on average. And then as we move to different application needs, less water or coarser sprays, we would have to make an adjustment with either water volume or spray quality to maintain a good performance. You want to move to the top left of this chart with anything that you do, and not to the bottom right. It's always a good idea to have some of these water-sensitive cards. They're available from retail outlets. They're about $1 each. They come in packs of 50. It's a good idea to throw one on the ground, make a pass if you've got a new system and want to make sure that you get sort of, a good coverage. I know that's a very difficult term to define, but it would look something like the middle card that I've shown you here. Of course, every product will behave somewhat differently. I want to switch attention to spray drift, and I do think it's essential in today's climate to pay attention to and learn about spray drift. And there's a lot of things that govern spray drift. We're only going to talk about one of them, but we'll talk about the most important ones just in listing them. And really the most important thing you could do if you have staff that spray, or if you're yourself an operator, is to take the time to train your staff or yourself and be conscientious about your use of the pesticides. That's the single most important thing you could possibly do. This is a picture of my father. I asked him to look conscientious in this picture. I thought he did a pretty good job, but then I took a picture later in the day and it was this picture and he drifted. So I'm going, obviously, looking conscientious wasn't good enough. Relationships are important, like in anything. And as we're becoming sort of an agricultural community that where we know each other less because our farms are larger and we're more under time pressure, it's easier to get angry at people that you don't know, with whom you don't have a relationship. It's important, I think, to continue to communicate even if you don't know someone and say, look, I'm spraying adjacent to your field. I'm spraying this. I'm going to take all the precautions I can. If you see a problem, contact me and we'll solve it somehow. That's a lot better than just doing something and hoping the phone doesn't ring, So that's just simple stuff. Weather conditions, of course, we'll talk about those. Spray quality, shrouds, boom height, travel speed all makes sense. Weather conditions. Tomorrow, you're going to hear from Ken Coles. He's going to talk to you about night spraying. And I want you to ask them about how to deal with inversions at night. And I'm going to just leave you with this. I'm going to tell you what an inversion is and why I think it's a problem. They don't happen every night, but they do happen. An inversion occurs mostly at night. They can occasionally occur during the day, but it's very rare. They usually start at sunset, and they usually start diminishing about an hour after sunrise. They persist overnight unless it's windy and cloudy. Okay? And the reason they occur is because of the absence of the sun creates a temperature inversion. I'll show you some pictures. But the problem with inversions is that they lead to a concentration of an airborne cloud, and it doesn't disperse. So it will travel somewhere and have some sort of impact there. It can travel a far distance. It's an unpredictable distance. It's an unpredictable impact. The good news is, if damage occurs 2 miles down the road, they might never know it was from you. So don't spray during temperature inversions. That's not why you bought AutoSteer. But it's a problem for us in agriculture, because we typically seek out these low wind times, right? And this is a typical pattern of wind during the day: low wind in the morning, high wind in the afternoon, low wind in the evening. So we seek out these opportunities here where the wind is low that coincide, unfortunately, with the greatest probability of inversions. And I would rather have us spray under slightly breezier conditions with a known impact on drift, and then do everything you can to mitigate drift with boom, travel speed, water volume, nozzle choice. It's more effective in terms of protecting yourself. Okay, just a quick primer on what an inversion is. You've heard of atmospheric turbulence, right? There's two kinds of turbulence. There's mechanical turbulence, which is really just the result of wind interacting with roughness elements on the ground, so trees, buildings, crops. And it creates these little turbulent eddies that kind of disperse things. They mix things up, right? It's just I think, very intuitive. Thermal turbulence is a little more difficult to understand, and that's because under sunny daytime conditions, we have heating of the ground, which lends itself to parcels of air. Can you still hear me? Parcels of air getting warmer and rising and continuing to rise, and up in the upper atmosphere, parcels of air falling and continuing to fall creates a tremendous amount of mixing in the atmosphere, much, much more effective than mechanical turbulence. In the absence of the sun, we have what's called a stable atmosphere, where the cool air is near to the ground and the warm air is above it. And that suppresses this thermal mixing. In fact, you cannot thermally mix air. You can't even displace air that's thermally stable. You can take a partial of air, you can move it down to the ground, let it go, it'll go right back where it came from. It wants to stay where it came from. Here's what happens. The typical situation under daytime conditions is that you have a decrease in temperature with height. So on the x-axis, I've got temperature. You see on the right, it's warmer. To the left, it's colder. And then you have elevation, and you see that the temperature decreases with height. If the sun disappears, the opposite happens, and temperature increases with height. And that's an inversion. This builds over the course of the night to sunrise. And it could be 300 meters high by that time of day or night. When the sun rises, the inversion starts to burn off at the ground. As the sun heats the soil heats the air warms up. And there will be free mixing within that lower level, but only to the height of the inversion cap. By 8 a.m., that cap is maybe 100 meters in the air, but it's still there. And by 3 p.m., it's gone. Okay? And that repeats itself day after day. So we get an inversion most nights, unless it's cloudy or windy. It traps particulates in low-lying areas, so drift can channel along waterways usually, and it's a real issue. I'll just go to this conclusion. Low drift nozzles used at high wind speeds cause less harm than conventional nozzles used at low wind speeds. They're that effective at reducing drift. I would rather have you go to a low drift nozzle than to spray at night if there's an inversion at that night. Okay? And the reason it's a problem is because the destination and the size of that drift cloud is impossible to predict. I've said that already. And finally, we're going to finish up here with a discussion about, if I have 5 more minutes, on pesticide spills. Usually when I visit farms, I like to wander away from the discussion and see what's happening behind the grain bins. Usually I find this. It's not unusual. It's a bit of the skeleton in the closet of the agricultural industry. And we need to take a little bit more care in making sure that we do not introduce pesticides into our groundwater. So a big don't here is don't drain anything into ditches or fields. I know that's easy to open the tap. But do spray your leftovers onto the field. And furthermore, rinse your sprayer. Do your first sprayer rinse in the field as well. Okay? And spray out that rinse aid. And I'm going to introduce now a new technology for getting rid of your rinse aid if you don't want to spray it out, and that's called the biobed. The biobed is basically a hole in the ground that you into which you mix 3 components, 1 part compost, 1 part soil, and 2 parts straw by volume, chopped cereal straw. Mix that up, compost it, put it in the ground, and then that develops a microbial population that can basically break down pesticides. We built a few of these in the last few years. This is one at Indian Head. And this is one in Sweden where the biobed was invented. Biobeds are fairly popular in Europe. You can see about 1,500 are in Sweden. There's only, in Saskatoon, the only location at Indian Head are the only locations for biobeds in Canada. But we're seeing them catch on in some other parts of the world. They recommend that you basically build this biobed, grass it, and then park your sprayer on it. Our initial results were very promising. We had a very rapid breakdown of 2,4-D, for example, in the biobed, compared to the black line, which was in soil. And we had in 2 weeks the rate of breakdown that we had, or the amount of breakdown that we had in 10 weeks in regular soil. So we built these biobeds. We chopped some straw. We incorporated humus. We mixed it all up. We got a mixture that looks like this. We built a pile. We aged that for about 4 or 5 weeks. It actually heated up. We dug a hole. We lined it with an impermeable liner. We put a drainage system into it, just basically weeping tile with a lysimeter. We filled it up, and then we built a tank that was able to gravity feed the pesticide waste into the material. Grass it over, have an automated pump system. $3,000. We also built an above-ground biobed. This is Dean Agombe. He's a graduate student on this project. He's defending his thesis on biobeds in a couple weeks. An above-ground biobed here, grassed over, and here are the 2. Just want to finish off with sort of a summary of the results that we had. We did these 6 herbicides, and we applied them over the course of 2 years, a fairly high quantity of these herbicides on a weekly basis over the summer. And then we measured how much leached, how much was retained by the biobed, and what percentage that was, and then we calculated how much was actually degraded. And we saw that because it was a closed system, we would pump that biobed empty and reintroduce it into the top. We had a fair bit of breakdown over time, and for most of these herbicides, we had a breakdown of about between 60 and 90%. The most persistent herbicides like metsulfuron were least well broken down, but the less persistent ones like 2,4-D, pyrosulfatol and thiophensulfuron and even tribenuron were quite effectively broken down by that biobed. So you can actually, I think, dispose of pesticides in a safe and contained way that will hopefully reduce the problem for groundwater. The issue probably will be what to do with the biomix, and we'll deal with some of those questions in future research. I want to thank Farming Smarter and Jamie and everyone there for inviting me to speak to you today. And I'll be here until supper time if you want to speak about some of these issues later. Thank you very much.